2017, broadcasting live from the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is 304 South Broadway in Salem, New Hampshire, and it's above Two Guys Smoke Shop. This is the first ever, first ever Podcast Cafe.
Are you a believer, Tom Grella?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. Yes.
All right.
He is a believer. So thank you to International Podcast Day for having us on their broadcast channel.
Honored to be here.
Honored to be here is right.
And so can't believe the size. I mean, there's so many of us out there, and just awesome to be part of that group.
Absolutely, a growing thing. The podcast world for sure. And this is the 4th annual International Podcast Day. It started in 2014 to help spread the word and sharing of podcasts. Certainly has come a long way in the 13 years that podcasting has been around. Started with Adam Curry from MTV. That was MTV Jock, and now has become something that's on my iPhone.
Yeah.
You know? And it was a couple of years ago that people got an iPhone and they said, "What is this podcast button?" So that was actually very good for us, meaning us that we had a podcast.
Right.
So very quickly, we did a podcast in 2010.
Good math, right off the top of your
There we
head
go.
there.
2010, and it was us three that got together. Jonathan, you were a little ahead of us. Yours, what was yours? A podcast?
Mine was a vodcast.
Okay, so video on demand. He did a podcast video, which we do also at the same time, but it was about you spinning records.
Yeah, a live streaming event, and that came about with a couple of DJs and I playing music till all hours in the morning, because that's what DJs do on an off night, Wednesday night,
Right. Yeah.
and figuring out a way to get that to go out to the masses, which my very first live stream was via Ustream, and you were on it. You were one of the 60 people that were on it.
Yes, watching along.
And-
Because you told me as a customer of my store,
Right.
And I'm in the cigar business. I sell cigars, Two Guys Smoke Shop, twoguyscigars.com, and online business too. And I saw it, Jonathan doing it Wednesday night, Webcast Wednesday.
Webcast Wednesday.
And I said, "Wow, is this cool?" And I actually typed into you and made a request, and you played the song. And I'm like, "Wow, years ago, this would cost millions of dollars to be able to somebody to go on live TV. Basically, what it looked like to me on my
And
screen.
I spent big money on my camera. It was $59.99.
That's right,
And it
just
was
shy of $60.
It was the early on wide angle. It was that back then you really didn't have much wide angle when it came to webcams, but it was early on wide angle so that I could get both turntables in, and I had a mirror hung so you could see what I was doing on the
Yes, and a
turntables.
sheet in the back of you. That was your backdrop.
You could
a
tell that
sheet.
was a sheet.
Yeah, I could tell.
Thank God we have wide angles now.
Yes.
Amen to that, brother.
Yes.
Amen to that.
So then I gave you a call and I said, any chance we could do one about cigars? Are you up for this?
And the answer is always yes.
Always yes. So I didn't know you very well, but you said, yeah, we're going to do it. So I called my friend Tommy Grella, who's at the end, and Tommy was on the next Food Network.
That's right. Next Food Network Star, season 3.
Yeah.
And I was on because of Dave.
Pushing you to do it.
Dave pushing me to do it and then making the video. But he knows that I like to be in the entertainment business. I like to be, on the camera and the microphone, wherever.
He's a great cook, great chef, and part of his thing is I said, you belong on TV because you make it so entertaining to dine with you. And still to this day,
it's what we do.
For those that are watching, look at him. Isn't he fun?
I look like a fun guy.
You never trust a skinny chef.
That's right. That's right. My affinity for mushrooms. I'm a fun guy.
So we were doing a podcast on cigars is what I wanted to do because I had a cigar shop, and Tommy is a friend and a customer, and Jonathan is a friend and a customer, and said, "What do you say we do this?"
Coincidentally, we all enjoy cigars.
So let's put this podcast together, whatever that meant. And you said you got it, so you came in with your DJ equipment.
Yeah, horrible. I mean, it took me an hour to set it up because you got signal paths that you don't realize when you're trying to broadcast. We want to be able to hear ourselves in the headphones. That's a signal path. You want to be able to have the microphones go out to a recorder and out to the video stream. Very complicated to set it up on the back end.
And for some reason, I felt that you had to do it in front of everybody in a store.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about. I don't know what
that was about either.
So I was thinking to myself, okay, if we're going to do this thing anyway, and I have a retail store, and we're going to talk about the products that are in a retail store, when they walk into the retail store, the show will be going on, and it'll be like if you hired the guy from the talk radio to be inside your store, and people would come in.
Or like at the fair, those live infomercial guys that are showing you the Ginsu knife, and they're not chopping their fingers off.
Right. That's what we did. That's how it started.
And people
we're actually smoking the cigars that we were talking about on the show. People coming in, and they wanted to smoke the same cigars we were doing on the show.
Yeah.
And sometimes Tommy would make fun of mob guys as they were walking in and almost get himself offed on the show.
I don't know. That was an incident that only happened once.
It was an incident. We call it the incident.
Well, that wasn't the real incident. There was two things that happened on the very first webcast that we did live in the store.
The bird.
The bird was one, which I thought you were going to die because there's a guy with a giant parrot, not a little parrot, a massive parrot on his shoulder, and you actually said out loud, are we just going to pretend this isn't happening? Because you can't pretend.
We were trying to play it so straight like we're broadcasters and radio guys trying to be who we're not. And a guy comes in with a big parrot on his shoulder, and we're talking, but you could see that our voices slowed down and our eyes are following this guy.
Yeah, we're not paying attention to what's happening on the show. We're paying attention to this massive green parrot.
And you could see that, what are we going to do at this point? So we said, I said to myself, I said, let me just say it, because I think it's coming off as something's going on in here. So I said, are we just going to make believe like this guy isn't walking around with a parrot on his shoulder, and you guys break out laughing?
That was great.
And then it begins the thing of, okay, we're going to be who we are.
We have to be who we are.
And but I think that's the success of the three of us.
Yeah, the success is this is who we are. And I'll say this to any podcaster going out there and trying to be who you're not. Boy, that's an awful lot of work.
Now, I'm not saying if you're somebody who swears like a truck driver that you bring that onto your podcast. You may want to, but you may have a hard time getting advertisers with that kind of platform. But you know, if you can clean your language up a little bit and play clean, you need to be yourself, because that's who you portray the best.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we found out right from jump is, although Dave and I had a strong friendship for many years, and you and Jonathan had formed a recent friendship, we weren't three guys that went and hung out together all the time. And we would now, obviously, right? But my point is, the three of us don't have the same personalities. We're very different. And there's certain things that, maybe off camera or off air, we don't agree on, or we don't talk about, or I don't know, we see things differently. But it makes for great presentation when we're together, because we're so different. Sometimes we have great banter as a result of that, just different perspectives. And so I say, welcome the different perspectives. Never yuck somebody's yum.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I'm just going to let you go with it.
There it is.
That didn't make sense.
That's an example.
That actually didn't make sense.
There was an example of
Another good example is we have a sister show called the Ash Holes. Ash, A-S-H, Ash Holes. And that's only because we monetized the Cigar Authority podcast so much so that there was no place to put any more advertising in. So we make a sister show, the Ash Holes. And some employees of mine that do this little side show that has begun and starting to
well, they were doing written reviews for the Cigar Authority, helping Barry out, who's our producer. He hasn't said anything today.
Yeah.
So they were
hard to say anything with the three.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be impossible. You might want to just sit this one
just
out.
mute your mic. So they were helping Barry out, and it was like, why not take this and do a live review show? Which I don't know if one exists with that type of format to date.
But the problem that happened, and you called it early on, is you said to them, "You guys are agreeing with each other.
Oh my
way
God.
too much."
It's like nails on a chalkboard.
But it was almost like that they felt like, oh, I don't want to dish you in front of the audience or something like that, because I know one guy likes this, one guy likes chocolate, one guy likes vanilla, and the guy says chocolate's the best, and the other guy says, I agree with you, chocolate is the best. Oh, don't do that. Then there's no show. Now
you
fight
need the animosity.
Fight while it's
the first time we're doing a cigar review. Jonathan was not a lifetime cigar smoker like you and I were at the time, and it was actually a good thing because his perspective of how he tasted things were totally different. And I remember the first time he was referred to having a cigar as like a turkey dinner.
Yeah.
Like the turkey skin. What did you say?
It was you take you well roast the turkey, and the skin gets all crunchy, and you get the rosemary, and you got the oregano, and the fat from the underside of the skin, and that's what I'm tasting. And you everybody
you
stopped.
Yeah.
So we weren't talking Swansons.
No. This
No.
is homemade turkey.
We stopped, and you know what? I hated to admit it at the time because here I am, the cigar guy. I really know my stuff, and here's this junior guy next to me who just started smoking a month and a half ago,
Yeah.
and he hits it like on the head.
Yeah,
He was
you could
dead
taste it.
right.
You could taste
He was
it.
dead right.
Yeah.
And it was great to have that different perspective.
Yeah.
I was so mad at him. that
Thanks,
day.
big man.
So it's been a long time coming, and us building basically 8 years doing a podcast, and it gained in popularity. And right now, I'm proud to say we have the most viewed cigar podcast in the world. Now, again, we're talking about cigar podcasts. How many cigar podcasts are there? The entire industry is a small industry to begin with anyway. So, but we did the best. We're pushing a 1.5 million downloads a year.
Yeah. You got about 1 in 1,000 people use premium cigars.
Right. And we're talking premium cigars. And, I know we have a lot of people that, this is a podcast show or something, and I don't like smoking. By the way, we're smoking, and we're in the smoking section because because you're there, and we can be here, and it doesn't even irritate you. So there's another plus for podcasts.
It
right?
might irritate people.
You don't have to like
Still.
cigars to enjoy the Cigar Authority. I mean, your dry cleaner listens, and he never smoked a cigar in his life.
Yeah, it's crazy, some of these things that happen. Anyway, so we try to make the show entertaining, goofing around entertainment like guys would talk inside a cigar shop. So it's not going to be, they just don't talk about their cigar for 2 straight hours. By the way, we do our show for 2 hours a week for 8 years now.
Never missed an episode.
Never missed an episode. We do it every single time. And if we're going to end up, the Saturday show is going to fall on Christmas Day, and nobody wants to come in on Christmas Day. We do 2 shows, and then we'll launch the other one out on a Saturday. But consistency, I think, was a big part of our success too. It's always there. It's always there. It's always there. And now, 8 years later, there's people that come visit our cigar shops, which was the idea to happen. And for us to be the authority on the subject, and how that came to me is my daughter was telling me to read this book on social media, and I should have a Facebook page in 2010. And I'm reading this, and in it, it says, you could also go as far as to do a podcast. Well, there's a word I never saw before. What does that mean? And let me figure out what it is. And I said, I can do that. And I'll call Jonathan, and he does his webcast thing, and this goes from there. So we've built a business, helping our business grow by doing a podcast. And I spent a lot of money on advertising for many, many years trying to build my company up. But I quickly found that the podcast was way better than print. An ad in a newspaper was much, much better than an ad in a magazine, was much, much better than the ad on local radio that only had a circumference of so far, and who was actually listening to that at that point.
Nobody listens to radio.
Then it was cable television, and they can put you exactly where you want. But again, there's 1,000 channels. And what is the next generation doing? I'm a 57-year-old man, and you die with the old ways, or else you grow and get better. So let me grow it better and change with the times. And quickly we saw, and listen, we took our show and we actually went syndicated with it and put it on 7 radio stations at the same time. That was doing nothing, but the podcast itself was growing and growing and growing exponentially. And also the audience that was listening was doing what we asked them to do.
Yes, they were.
So they would come visit us at the store. We would quickly become the authority on the subject because we certainly said we were. That was a big part of it.
Yeah.
I really kind of know my stuff when it comes to cigars.
That was an important part. We didn't just say it. We backed it up.
Yeah.
We did back it up.
Yeah. So, and then before you knew it, it was some of the manufacturers that said they'd like to buy an ad. Next thing you know, we had 25 ads in a 2-hour show weekly.
Which we don't recommend people.
No, I highly
if you're
recommend
just starting with a podcast, do not do 2 hours.
And listen, we're in 8 years. I highly recommend against it because listen, you want the listenership too. So I don't want the guy to go 30 minutes in and say, okay, enough of this. So we've learned little tricks along the way. It's a segmented show. And there's teasers along the way to try to bring them to the next thing, to try to bring them to the next. But I don't know how many people listen to it from start to finish at once. You know, maybe they stop at a certain point and later on, but there's enough breakage in between that you can do that.
Well, I listen to our show every week, and I can't make it through the full 2 hours because I listen when I'm driving. So I have a 22-minute commute, incidentally.
Yeah.
So I get about 22 minutes of show. It takes me 4 trips back and forth from home to hear the whole thing.
Yeah, and what I want people to realize is with the new media age, this podcast age that we're in, you are focusing in on the listener that wants to listen to you, and you're speaking directly to them, unlike the old media, which is, as you put it, Dave, blast broadcasting. And maybe you're getting a lot of people out there just who happen to be within your area who are watching your show or listening to your show because it's all that's available. Now, people are focused in and only paying attention to what they want.
Yes.
So if you are the Cigar Authority, you talk about cigars, 100% of your listenership uses your product, or 99%, 98%, okay? As opposed to the opposite would be 10% of your listeners would use your product.
Yeah.
So now in terms of advertisers, if you want to monetize your show, you can tell them with certainty, this is my demographic.
Oh, yeah. And
we know
all the information's out there. As an advertising buyer, I would throw just stuff against the wall and hope something sticks.
Blind.
And at the end of it, I advertise on radio, TV, newspapers, and multiple of each one. And at the end of it, we did okay. Well, they say about advertising, 50% works, 50% doesn't work. The problem is, which 50% worked? You can't figure it out. So it ends up being a loser. The great thing about this podcast business that I created for myself to help my businesses, I feel very good about my advertisers. I feel like I am giving them more than their money's worth. I think a podcast is a win-win-win situation for everybody. And if you can build a business that's a win-win-win for everybody, it's a win for the person listening to it. We give them some entertainment and give them some knowledge sprinkled in, right? We joke with ourselves that, you know, we're giving more. We're not talking enough about the cigars because we're trying to keep it entertaining at the same time. The advertiser is hitting a direct hit on people, and they're acting because we are saying, as the authority, if this is a good product.
Well, we smoke a cigar, and even if we didn't, we did an episode today where we didn't all agree that it was a cigar that would go into our regular rotation. But
there are too strong for us.
Correct. There are people that listen to the show that know that if it's the opposite of our flavor profile, it hits theirs exact.
Correct.
And we will track the sales in our company the next day and the next week and watch those cigar sales go up as a result of us just smoking it on the show.
Yeah, so it is a win-win, and listener gets it, the advertiser gets it, and if you are a smart broadcaster, a smart podcaster, and you can figure out the monetization of it, and it took us a long time. You know, that didn't come out of the box by any means.
That was years in.
Yeah.
It was a couple years in.
And as we, you know, listen, it was podcasting 8 years ago was a little different than it is today. There wasn't enough information. I was Googling, trying to find information of how to do it, what to do, but it's out there.
It is out there.
It is out there, but it is work. If you think it's just going to come automatically, it's not going to. And we made so many mistakes along the way, and this is a reason for creating Studio 21. As I learn these mistakes, I share them with them. Sharing is a big part of what podcast world is. For everybody anyway, but I share this is how to do it. Anybody's interested in doing it, I'm happy to help them along the way, and this is the pluses and minuses or whatever, and I've learned from my mistakes. I made so many of them. So Tommy comes to me. Tommy ends up leaving the show after about a year, gets into a restaurant business, and his life is going on, and life happens and whatever. So me and Jonathan do the show. Jonathan actually quits on me for a little bit, very short.
You always have to tell that story.
Yes.
You always have to tell that story.
He comes back.
It's very hurtful.
Well, it's the truth. And Barry, who's usually on set, is off because we have Tommy on.
Well,
but
the stage wasn't big enough for me and Tom.
There we go.
I don't think it could have supported both of us.
It's barely big enough for Tommy's ego.
Thank you, Mr. Jonathan.
So Tommy comes to me, and this is not long ago. How many weeks you in now? 20 weeks or so? How many weeks?
No, 35.
Oh, really? 35 weeks?
Yeah, just over half a year.
So 36 weeks ago, you know, I said, what you should do then is maybe you do a podcast. And you said, I'd love to do a podcast. And I said, well, do it. And you said, well, I don't know how to do it. And I said, well, I'll show you what to do. And you said, I don't have the equipment. I said, use my equipment. And you said, and you know, what do I end up doing? Can you help me out and at least do the first one with me? Okay. So he nailed me on everything.
Yes,
So the show's been on for 36 weeks, and you've been on 37 episodes, I think.
Right.
So good luck
Right.
just helping him.
so
you're not leaving us, Mr. J.
no. So I said, okay, but you got me thinking at that point that there's a lot of people like you that say, I don't know how to do it.
Large men? Is that?
I don't have the equipment, and I don't want to go through all the wrong things that you went
Right.
through. We bought all the equipment 3 times till we got the right equipment, and losing episodes and all the things that went wrong.
We had we were terrible at interviewing, and we finally, right around episode 10, we get this interview with this guy Jesus Fuego, and we interview him, and it was actually good.
Unbelievable. It was very good.
It was
Yes.
not very good. It was
the best
good
we
for
had
us.
ever done, probably ever.
And something happened on the server on Ustream, which was our hosting VODcast site at the time, and that was the only way we got the show out was video. And we
cut the
realized at
audio
that
from
point that
We lost it.
we needed a backup recorder.
Wow. So now we got a backup recorder. We got the audio thing going in 2 different places.
And there's
We got
been-
this.
There has been times, and Barry, you can attest to this, where something has happened with the audio settings in the recorder, and we've had to pull the audio off of YouTube and create the
Yeah.
podcast out of YouTube, which you want to give yourself at least a backup.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave has no idea, but the Cigar Authority show today had that same error with the sound card, but thankfully we now have 2 backups.
Right.
And within 5 minutes, it was corrected, and Dave never knew it happened. He
Wow.
still doesn't.
No, geez. And thank you for keeping that away from me till the very tail end of today, because International Podcast Day. So the idea was that I'll build this studio, and it's available for hire for people to just walk in. So why would you just walk? We know you can do it in your basement. You can do it
Sure.
in your closet if
Right.
you want. You can do it right on your phone or whatever. But there's some people that would like just to walk in, do it, and walk out. Everything gets loaded for them. Everything gets done. They don't have to worry. There's many backups. They're going to have much less pitfalls than they do. You could join a gym. Me and Tommy aren't going to do it, but let's assume, but let's say you could buy weights and stuff, and you could put them in your house, and you could have the weights there and stuff. But instead, you go to a gym, and after you're done, they clean up for you, and they, whatever, deal with the broken weights or whatever ends up happening with the weight, and people choose that. So my idea is people may choose to just walk in, everything's done for them, walk out. They have to come in with their content. They have to know what they're going to talk about. Their
Show
bullet points,
prep is so important.
That's a key.
And
which
and
I fought with you at the beginning.
you fought with me.
Yeah,
And
you didn't wanna do it.
not only is show prep important, but how you lay out your show is vital. You want to try to have a similar format from show to show, and bullet points is a must. Do not try to write yourself a show
Script.
book
Yeah, don't
that you
script
think
it.
you're going to read because you're going to get on the camera or you're going to get onto the microphone, and it's all going to go away and you're going to lose your place. Bullet points is the answer because you can always refer back to the bullet points and know where you are on that show.
Absolutely. So I think it's the golden age of podcasting right now. This is where TV was in the 50s, 60s. It becomes the big thing. We're here now with that. And International Podcast Day, I saw that existed, and I was ready to open up the podcast studio. Coincidentally, the 29th of September was National Coffee Day. And the 30th of September is International Podcast Day.
It's a match
So-
made in heaven.
They're right next to each other. There's a day for everything and anything. But, okay, that's when we're going to launch Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. So here it is, a coffee shop. There's people here drinking coffee. There's, if you want to call it entertainment, but there's people on the stage doing a podcast. And we'll see where it goes. If it works out, who knows? It becomes podcast cafes across the country. Wouldn't that be nice?
It
And
would
all
be
you
nice,
podcasters,
especially if they allow smoking.
Yeah.
yeah, that's not going to happen.
So, but
So keep in mind the business that we're in. We're in the toughest business that there is. We're in tobacco, and the evil tobacco.
well, in terms of advertising, you're in the toughest business
Yes.
that there is. I mean, you're basically, your hands are tied for everything. But with regards to, Dave, what you set up here for people to be able to do their own podcast, I say a lot of you like to incorporate not only your hobbies but your professional lives into your podcast, and it's a great way to let people know who you are, establish yourself as a professional and as an authority in your business, and to be able to get information to people you're trying to get information to. You don't have the time to be a technician and get your show together. You just want to be able to do it. You're too busy doing what it is you're doing. You're successful at it. Good for you. We commend you for that. That's where I think Studio 21 really shines. You can literally walk in the door, do your podcast, and walk right out.
And
everything is done for you.
Look at it. I mean, those that are watching video-wise, I mean, we built a beautiful set. Even talking to people that build the sets for CNN and Fox News and stuff, we went to them. I mean, we went all out, the lighting, everything we could. When it comes to the coffee end of it, we got Sean the barista. He's doing fancy drinks and Nitro coffee and all kinds of stuff. This is Studio A, which is the podcast and vodcast studio.
Video on demand cast for those that don't know what that is.
And right next to us is a little booth. It holds 5 people, and they can do a audio only, which looks pretty cool too. So part of it is it looks good. You feel more professional maybe when you're in the professional atmosphere. And
I, for one, feel more professional.
In terms of how we used to when we started the vodcast from day one, in terms of how the picture looked, if you go and look at old Cigar Authority views, they don't look anything like the stage looks now.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to see. It's hard to make us out. Quite frankly, that's not a bad thing at my size.
Right.
But it's fantastic how we look now on the set. I mean,
for what you have to deal with.
I wore dark colors on purpose. You're welcome.
Yeah.
But seriously, it does make a big difference in terms of how people perceive you and how professional you are at what you do. And again, I can think of a million professions, realtors and jewelers and investment professionals and bankers and whatever that want to get their podcast out there. You're going to look like a pro by setting up with a studio like Studio 21 right from jump.
And the information is power. So if you have the information and you need to get the information out to the masses, podcasting's the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then we go another step further, and then we create the United Podcast Network. And the idea of this is we have to do the Cigar Authority podcast. We got the Ashholes podcast to do. We got the Wellseasoned Gourmand show. And, we create this thing so that we could pay one fee basically to some of the things that we have to pay fees to. And we'll create that and actually put it through. So, and there's work entitled of getting all these things in the certain places.
Right.
So I know of podcasters that make a podcast, and we've been interviewed many times on other people's cigar podcasts, for instance, and they record the podcast, and sometimes a month goes by. And that podcast has never been put up. And they listen, they have their life and whatever they're doing, and it never gets there. And then a month later, all of a sudden it's there. And I listen to it myself, and some of the information that's there is dated. And it's too late. And it's because somebody didn't go the extra step. So our thing is, it's finished. At the end of the podcast, we're going to take it from beginning to end, and hopefully before you leave. You're getting in the car driving away and stuff, and boom, we're putting this thing on here, and the next thing you know, it's up there on iHeartRadio, on iTunes, it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on all the things, everything we can possibly get it onto, and then help and work with you a little bit to try to get it viewers that are out there. So having the viewers I have, and maybe they're not the perfect viewers for you, but it's all we're going to help each other because we're all inside this United Podcast Network.
That's right.
So maybe some of my customers are interested in your thing, whatever it is. Tommy's happens to be food. Well, everybody eats food, so there's 100% here. How many people that eat food are going to be interested in cigars? Well, we know that number is
1 out of 1,000.
1 out of 1,000 people, but whatever. A food guy ends up here, and I'd like a cigar after a great meal or something like that. Let me learn a little about cigars. And I have an online presence and a way to monetize that to get people on it. But we even came up with an idea that people listen to our show, and we're smoking a cigar during the show, and they would love to listen to our show while they're smoking the same exact cigar.
To Tommy's point earlier, because we are kind of known for tasting what we taste, which is what most people would think is an oddball way to describe the flavors in a cigar.
Yeah, because
turkey skin,
right?
It's odd,
and there's no turkey skin inside a cigar. It's only rolled tobacco and water, and that's the ingredients of what a cigar is. Different than a cigarette, folks. I know we got a lot of people in on, but it's very, very different product. And how else can we describe something other than flavors of things that we've tasted before? So it has those things in it. Is it exactly turkey skin? But you get the idea.
Right.
And if you ended up taking a draw on the cigar, you'd get it.
Well, and think in terms of a wine taster, they may be tasting currants and blackberry. There's no currants or blackberry in the wine.
Right.
It's just
Grapes.
grape juice. But the different sugars and the different tannins create things on your palate that remind you of foods that you've also eaten or drank.
And some of the things you hear on cigars is leather and wood. The
only one on the panel that I know of that knows exactly what the taste of leather is Barron's.
I thought we were going to leave that alone.
Yeah.
I mean, we
and
smoked
that's
a
for other
cigar
reasons.
earlier that reminded me of a ball gag. So
Yeah, right.
That's
and this is part of
Too much
what we call the charm.
information is what that is.
So, all this came natural to connect inside the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe because I love coffee, I love cigars, and I actually love podcasting now. I love the whole idea of it. I know it is the future. I know people are taking major jumps with it. It's a new medium, and I see people actually, today was our grand opening. There were radio people here that I talked with.
Yeah.
And they're interested, and they should be interested, because if you were the guy that made typewriters and you made the best typewriter in the world, and as you see the internet coming in and computers and all that stuff, and you didn't go to keyboards, you made a big mistake.
Big mistake.
Because what are you doing now?
You got to change with the times.
The guy making records and didn't go to CDs, and now what's a CD guy doing or something? But as these change happens, you got to change as it's going on. So I'm not a big tech guy, but it's pretty obvious what's happening technically with people on their phones. 3 years ago, I got my iPhone, and there was a little square in there, and it said podcast. It was built into the iPhone. Big jump when that ended up happening.
Big.
And that's not happened on Android yet, but it will. Android will end up putting it on there. It's going to be another big jump. And then the new vehicles that have come out, all of a sudden on your dashboard, it's going to be podcast. And you're going to hit the button at that point. Another big jump. So
I think it even gets bigger than that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that what you need to look at going forward is our generation was given networks which told us this is what you're going to watch and this is when you're going to watch it. And the next generation, our kids, your daughter, my daughters, they're not going to go to a cable company. I'm sorry, but I think in the next 20 years, I'm going to find big networks out there, but you're all dead. Because the kids today aren't limited to what the television is streaming at them in the 100 channels that they have.
Well, and just
they're not limited at all. They're limited only to the internet. So they'll go out there to the internet and say, I am interested in XYZ, and I will go find that information
and I will
entertainment,
and I will watch it and listen to it when I want.
Well, look
Yes.
at
Not when you want me to watch it Wednesday at 9 o'clock
without
Central.
filtration.
Well, look at CBS. CBS has the new Star Trek show, and it's not on their regular rotation. It's only on streaming on demand on the CBS app. So CBS is getting away from broadcasting,
They better.
and they're going to on-demand services.
everything that we interact with when it comes to the world is slowly turning into our phones. TV prices are dropping dramatically because no one needs a TV anymore. You have a TV in your pocket.
Yeah.
Well, when you
That's
have it's like going to a grocery store and they have the shelves where the candy are, okay? And you have the one shelf as you're walking through the checkout counter, okay? And it has, let's say, 10 spots wide and 10 spots deep. You have 100 different candy bars to choose from. You can easily scan that in 30 seconds and decide what it is you're going to buy. Now we're limited to nothing. We're limited to the internet. It's like the entire 100,000 square feet is lined from floor to ceiling with candy bars everywhere.
Yeah.
Interesting that you went to food.
What a
Always.
shocker.
Always.
That's a
What a
shocker.
shocker.
I was convinced that the way that Dave got you here was he told you it was International Donut Day.
That was 2 Thursdays ago.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Stop making fun of me.
And it was the banana cream was the winner, by the way.
But there is no limitations anymore.
Right.
There's no more limitations. And that's how we're going to see things change dramatically. And now the issue becomes, how is it if you have a podcast, Okay, and it's the analogy I made: the candy bar in the store that's 100,000 square feet, and there's a million of them out there. How do you get the person who's looking for your candy bar to find yours?
Yes.
You become a part of a network.
There is the magic. But the magic then for anybody like you is they're going to want to be part of your candy bar. They're going to want to be part of your program. So if now there's a company out there that has the same audience, they're going to want to sponsor your show.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
There's the magic.
But your show needs to be credible. In other words, we talked about you need to be the authority on your subject.
That's right.
Which means you have to do your homework. You have
Yes.
to talk about whatever subject matter it is and have the information. You need the goods. You can fake it for a while, but you need the goods.
Well,
man.
the reason why we did the Well-Seasoned Gourmand was very simple. The people who were doing food review shows on national networks available through cable
Yeah.
were doing it as pay-for-play only. They're still doing it right now for pay-for-play only.
Yeah.
So restaurants pay to be on these shows, and these shows talk about restaurants. These people who run the shows have never owned restaurants, have never worked in the business. They take money and they go on and say that this sandwich is really good. And we came in those Well-Seasoned Gourmand and said, you know what? We know we're going to get the listeners. We know we're going to get the foodies because we're only talking to you about what's great that we know is great. And we're not accepting any money from any restaurants to do that. So
you actually ate all the French fries you talked about today?
that's right.
You're a professional.
He's been practicing his whole life for this kid.
That's right.
His whole life he's been practicing.
I've sacrificed my body, this temple,
Yes.
for your happiness.
There we go. And an interesting show it was. You'd be surprised what the number one French fry was. And you've all eaten it. You'd be surprised what it is. This is the tease. And it makes you go to the Well-Seasoned Gourmand to find what the answer is,
The French fry episode.
which is what we recorded today.
Yep.
Today, International Podcast Day, which usually do your show on a Wednesday.
Right.
But you came in today, so we would do it because we're launching Studio 21. So we had 6 different podcasts, and this is the 6th one. We're ending after the show for the day. But our lineup, as we start getting these people and people coming to us actually today interested in doing it, on Wednesday we're going to have a jeweler, a diamond jeweler that's going to do a diamond jewelry show on podcasting. Never did a podcast in his life. Wants to do a podcast, and he wants to do it every Wednesday at noon. At 1 o'clock, we're going to have a real estate guy that it's going to be called Real Estate House Party, and he's going to be on the show at 1 o'clock, his show from here. 2 o'clock Wednesdays is the Well-Seasoned Gourmand, and that'll be Tommy Grella, and you've been on it. Yep. I've been on it. Sharon's on it. We have the Ashholes that'll be on at 4 o'clock. Thursday show that's coming up is going to be Easy Money New England, and they did a show today.
Yeah.
Their first show ever.
Great.
Never did a show. Did fantastic. Brought a guy in for commercial real estate and talking about it. I learned a lot. It was awesome. Now, again, we do a show for 2 hours. Not knowing that it wasn't radio and understanding that I think that the show has to run as long as it runs. Another trick of the trade, your show has no start and no stop time.
Because it's on demand.
It's on demand. And the key is to stop talking when you have nothing to say. We can do 2 hours because we got a lot to say and we can keep going. But no, but truly for the enjoyment of the listener and stuff, if you're 34 minutes into your hour time, stop. That's it. And go on to the next. Tease the next episode, bring them on. There's so much to learn for me to learn. But Easy Money New England, their first time out there, I think the guy killed it.
Killed it. And he was planning on going 30 minutes. He went 36 minutes because he had the extra content.
Yep.
And he was okay to do it.
So he prepared extra, which is also good to do. That, we've come in short, we've come in long with extra things and stuff. Some of the things you put aside and you can save them for later. Some things end up going away because they're timely and it's no use of it. The Success Coaster. This is Fred Smith Jr. We had him on just a little while ago, right before us. And Fred is an entrepreneur, ups and downs in his career, and he interviews people with ups and downs in their career. A lot to learn on that show.
Wow.
It was his first show. Oh, my God. He had a guy from Popeye's Chicken and who built a massive amount of stores, sold them out, got into now it's
education,
kids' education and stuff. What's one have to do with the other and stuff?
Nothing.
It's just a great entrepreneur. It doesn't matter what it is. He'll go on to the next thing. And believe me, he cashed out for the big money, rang the bell, big money. But the entrepreneur could not stop at that point. He says, okay, I got to do something else. But he's doing something else for a different reason. So he's not chasing the money anymore. He's making these places for children. And you got a girl, healthy girl I wrote down for.
Yeah, the Torinator. She's not just into physical health, but also mental health, a survivor of anorexia, real bad, and went all the way down and hit rock bottom and has really worked herself back up and built up her self-esteem. So her plan is to do a podcast and help people with those types of issues.
That's awesome. So, and there's a guy from that buys and sells cars, and he's interested in doing it. And a lot of people talking, and the idea today was to show people the place around, get their wheels turning. But the key is, I would say to them, if you're thinking about doing it, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Make the step forward and just begin the thing. Don't wait. I'm going to think about doing it.
You'll never do it.
No, because the fact of the matter is, your first episodes are going to be crappy anyway.
Right.
So just get it done.
Yeah.
Get it done and get that
Rip it
past
off
you.
like a Band-Aid.
And you can choose or not choose to broadcast your first episodes. We chose not to.
We chose not to broadcast the first two, and the third one probably shouldn't have gone on either, if I'm being honest.
Right. But you listen to it, and Jonathan saying, listen to the show. Why do you listen to your own show? You want to hear yourself talk? No, that's how you critique yourself and you make yourself better.
Yeah.
It's the only reason why I listen, by the way. I like to hear myself talk.
You only have to do it by yourself. I mean, I do it every week too, by myself. And, I think about the things that I could have done better, and we bring it to the next week. And that's just the way you learn.
How many conversations did we have early on? And I'm talking 7.5 years ago about the Oz.
Yeah.
The Oz.
Just pause.
Right.
But you feel like you got to go, But how about the people that do podcasts totally by themselves? One, and I've done, I think, 2 of them. Did you ever do one?
Yeah, I've done a handful, just solo.
You didn't show up or something happened. I ended up having to do the show myself, and you said, no, we'll just not do it or something. I said, I'm in. We'll record it a different day. I'm going to do it. And I put myself through that agony. And let me tell you, 2 hours by yourself. And there's pros out there, obviously, that do it. But usually there's a sidekick, radio guys and things like that. They have somebody on the side, or even the producer, to go to them, turn their mic on and help out a little bit. It's so much easier with somebody to bounce off of, to be able to say something. And as you said earlier, with an opposing view, having the same exact view and both of you are saying, yeah, there's nothing to it. So part of this thing is entertainment. So whatever show you're doing, it has to be entertaining to a certain degree.
I don't even think part of it. I think the majority of it. You got to remember, we're here for entertainment.
Remember your
here
teachers that you had in school. Remember who your best teachers were?
Oh, yeah.
They were fun to listen to.
Right. They made it a little entertaining. So we want to teach, but we want people to
to listen.
Maybe tune in for the fun factor or us goofing around or whatever. But at the end of it, they've learned something that we wanted to pass on. And we want to, we've turned it into a business. It was always a business from the get-go that I wanted to improve my business with my store. I wanted to actually improve my stature in the cigar industry, make myself, how dare I call myself the Cigar Authority?
How dare you?
Yeah, but going in, you say, do I have what it takes to end up being able to say this word, and somebody else say, oh my God, the guy doesn't even know his stuff. I do know my stuff, so I'm prepared to do it. And I said, okay, I'm going to live up to the word that I'm going to call this.
Yep.
Tommy Grello, Wellseasoned Gourmand. Tough word to spell. I didn't even know what it meant, but it's exactly what it is.
It is what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, as a matter of fact, because you've said, and I don't disagree with you, it's got to be a better way to say to somebody, you eat good food at good restaurants, 93 North, from Boston, 93 North in that corridor. Well, how do you say that? And how do you say I'm the guy that tells you to do that? I mean, sometimes it's difficult to convey that message. You listen to the show for 5 minutes and you pick it up real fast.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to say what I am. I'm the, you and I have been friends for over 20 years. And for over 20 years, you and I have together many, many times said, hey, you feel like going to get bagels? Yeah, let's go for a ride. It's only an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
And that's who we are. Yeah. That's just who we are. And
we think that there's other people just like us.
And we think there's other people just like us. And
there is no one No one, just like the two of you. No
People do
one.
it.
Okay, we're a little unique.
No, people go to other states to get a hot dog, and people go.
You know what? If I was
On
going to,
trips to get
if I was going to New York City, I would love to be able to find a show, a podcast that was like the Wellseasoned Gourmand that was New York City, listen for the week before I'd made the trip, and then know exactly where to eat.
Yeah.
I feel the
If
reason
you're
I'm
coming to
skinny is because
Boston-
I'm lazy then, because there is
You
no
are.
way I'm driving
You
an hour
are.
and a half for a
'Cause you
freaking
don't love
bagel.
food.
We tell you this all the time.
I love food.
No, you don't.
Not that
You
much.
don't
No,
even
you don't.
know. Not that much. Is the
Now,
How
secret.
many times did I tell you to get outside of the town you live in?
Yeah, it's not happening.
Right.
So the other benefit to doing your own podcast is the public speaking aspect. And I think it was Jerry Seinfeld that said that there's people that the public speaking at a funeral, they would rather be the guy in the casket than the guy up on the
Giving
microphone, right?
eulogy. Yeah.
So when you do the podcast, even if you're by yourself and you're doing it solo and you're by yourself completely, you're in your basement and you found a way to record it on the computer and get it uploaded, you will become a better speaker
Yes,
because
you will.
even though there's no one around you right there, you know that you are broadcasting to an audience who will listen to your podcast. Incidentally, most podcasts downloaded.
And who
on
you're
Monday.
talking to is actually one person, because there's only one person listening at a time. Whoever we're talking to that's listening to this is only one person. It's not like this.
Yeah, we're talking to you.
You're ruining my whole ego vibe right now. I imagine that there's 10,000 people all at once.
They're not all at once. It's
Damn
one
it.
at a time.
Oh.
What's a little messed up here is that there's a studio audience in here. But they have an option to go in another room and close the door if that's what they want to do. But there's a studio audience. I would say put yourself right on the floor of the retail store like we did. We threw ourselves in there and
You throw yourself in the fire, and there is something to that because you
you
become
get
better.
something out of it. You get something out of it. And by doing a podcast, you're going to get something out of it. You're going to, preparing for a podcast, you're going to do so much learning just preparing for that podcast of getting your facts straight.
And I would say, you said you could do it by yourself, and I would make a cautionary statement and say it is very difficult to do that.
More difficult.
I would
harder,
highly
sure.
recommend you do not start doing it by yourself. Start doing it with somebody else, and then if you want to morph to doing it by yourself, I guess you could.
Yeah.
But then you have to be multiple personalities to be entertaining. Otherwise, you're
Where's
a
the bell?
one-note record. What are you
Sound
talking
effects,
about?
You've got
Multiple
you
personalities.
absolutely have multiple personalities. There's regular Tommy. There's hangry Tommy.
hangry. That's angry, hungry.
There's full Tommy where everything's okay
Yeah, right
And I'm
after
half
you eat.
asleep.
for now.
Right after you eat.
For now,
Well,
when's the next road trip?
I'm just saying, this is a good example of the banter that goes back and forth. You and I could talk about anything. The mating season of the mosquito, and it's going to be entertaining because you and I banter well.
We do banter well.
We do.
We love each other. That's why.
We do. But that's what makes a good show. Remember, we're in the entertainment business, guys. First, if you're doing a podcast, you need to be entertaining. You just need to be.
Yeah. Now, we got a blogger that was out there, a guy that would write reviews and stuff on cigars. I hear him in the background over there, and brought him on. And that's Barry, who today is just working the soundboard. Usually we're just going to have a guy off camera to do the soundboard. But for all this time, you did the soundboard while you're doing the show anyway, which I'll tell you takes away. I've heard Barry be interviewed by other cigar podcast things, and he's fantastic.
Kills it.
And
Thank you.
I say to him after, I go, "You're unbelievable. You were the best one on, and it was fantastic. Why don't you bring that on our show?" And he, jokingly, or I don't know how serious he is, it's like trying to get a word in edgewise becomes part of the problem.
Well,
But
it took me 6 minutes to get my CBS analogy out before. I mean, sometimes it's really hard. Like, I want to yell at you guys, shut up and let me speak. So sometimes it's hard to get a word in edgewise.
Right. Now, but another thing is that you are concentrating on the logistics of it. We have different segments and things that happen during the whole show.
Right.
It's not like we end up talking straight for 2 hours. There's, all segmented, broken into it because there's commercial content and all that stuff. And by concentrating on that, you can see that he's not 100% in with what we're at. And then I'll say something to him. You can see the hesitation because he missed some of it, of what it is. So having a producer that's producing the show so you can completely concentrate on the subject matter.
And when you said doing the show by yourself and you have the producer there, the producer really only counts as half a person because their number one priority is making sure that the levels are correct so that there's no post-production editing. And that's
Yeah.
for us because we want.
Yeah. By the way, we do not have any post-production. There's no editing that happens on any of our shows. So the show's over, it's loaded up, and it's immediate. It's done. Where somebody else will take that, and then they go into the editing thing. And that's why it takes sometimes 3 weeks to get their show up on, because now they're going to go into serious editings and take away the R's. If you're going to take away the R's, either stop saying them or
Leave 'em
live
in.
with them, because that's who
Yeah.
you are. You say it all the time. If you're hearing my New England accent, if we went into editing and tried to get rid of this, forget it. Nothing would ever get on. So
Well, technology's changed that though too. I mean, technology has made it so that you could edit already faster than you used to be able to, and it's going to continue to get better. So I'm sure that if it's knowing you and knowing how we work here at Studio 21, if editing is something that needs to be done in the future and can be done more quickly, it's something that we will be able to do. But for right now, we were able to get your product out faster, which we believe is ultimately really what's
The
important.
whole thing
Get your
is
message
having
out.
the show consistently up and on,
Yes.
especially to make sure you hit
Every
that
single
Monday
week.
download threshold.
because if somebody goes looking for your show and the next thing you know it's not on there, they go to next week and it's not on there. Next thing you know, they find somebody else and then they forgot about you.
There's
and
only
you-
so many hours in the week.
Yeah.
This person is a person who listens to podcasts. You should have your podcast up before everybody else does.
yeah. December we're going to have our 400th podcast up.
Oh,
400 of them.
unbelievable.
And we're talking about cigars. You know what the subject matter is you're talking about. We're talking about rolled up tobacco leaves, 2 hours a week, 400 times. Whatever you're doing, there's a lot more to talk about than there is of the things of the week that we're talking about. So
Yeah.
certainly there should be no end to what it is. So think about it, improve the thing. If you're thinking about doing a podcast and you listen to it, just do it. Just do it, for God's sakes. Do it. Don't wait for, I got to get the audio right. I got to make sure. Just do it.
Do it,
Put 'em in.
listen to it, and then you'll be able to check it and,
Yeah.
and make yourself better.
Yeah. So we're running out of time. And part of the thing is when, we got an hour on the thing and it's getting really close now. But you stop when it's time to stop because you don't have anything to say.
We have no choice. We have to go the full hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to wait until the guy jumps on and shuts us off and says
He's
it's over.
ready. He says he's ready anyway.
Okay.
But I'd like to go another hour. He's shaking his head. No. Well, but I want to say to them, Dave and Steve and the gang there, International Podcast Day, thank you so much for thank you for doing this. And that there is an International Podcast Day. It brings attention to podcasting. There's a world of podcasting out there. If you're not in it, you're missing the game. This is an awesome thing that's there. 10 years ago, this would be $1 million to pull something like this off.
Yes, it would.
And you have this right in your pocket in your phone. So thank you so much for doing this. And until next year, International Podcast Day continues right now. I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Thanks so much.
Have a good night.
Hey, thank you guys. Absolutely gracious to Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. You guys were amazing. Make sure everybody heads over to Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, checks out everything that they're doing over there. So let's continue the conversation using hashtag International Podcast Day. We have some great events still planned. And if you've missed any of our previous segments or you're listening to this later on YouTube, make sure you're checking out our channel and viewing all of the previous sessions and information that everybody shared. So thank you, everybody. This is Dave Lee signing off for International Podcast Day.